So we've been at the project for about, Pat, how long? 2018. So the project initially started in 2018. We got the keys to the building in October of 2019. It was a super big deal. And really we started our demo and abatement series of projects probably in January of 2020. So it's progressing. There's a lot to do. I often do take visitors. You know, I bring them on site for the first time and they look at me and they're like, "What? How come this is going to take so long?" I say, "Well, let's take a walk." And we do a quick walk. Well, you can't quickly walk through the building, but you take a walk through and you understand the scope that's involved in it. So.
Sorry if there was any
no
troubles
worries.
getting started.
No worries.
You can just use the mouse to switch between the slides.
Absolutely. Can I go back though? And for those of you online, we're back. So really the project is preservation, restoration, and modernization. The systems within the building were old and needed to be replaced, and it had to be done all at the same time. There had been so much kind of stopgap measures through the years that the system really needed to be torn out and replaced. So that's what we're up to right now. So this is the east side. That up there is West Block. This is our site office. So the site office sits on the front lawn, in between the front lawn accessible to the public and the excavation for the new construction. That's the hole that you see there. Interesting thing about the modular site office, we designed and built that ourselves. So rather than go out and get a modular solution, we did that all within the BIM team with some external consulting by some architects. And it's also 400 feet long, so you get your steps in. All right. So I'm going to discuss a little bit today about what the construction manager is using BIM and VDC for on the project. And really we're using it for a variety of things. One of our key components is communication. With so many people involved in the project and so many different parties interested in the project, visualization is really key to what we do there to demonstrate the CM's means and methods, how we're going to go about building things, taking things apart, that sort of thing. So we do a lot of 4D, we do a lot of sequencing, animations, that sort of thing. We use it for coordination, because obviously when we talk about temporary works at Center Block, those temporary works can be in place for a week, they can be in place for a year, they can be in place for 5 years. So we need to be able to coordinate around all of our temporary works while we do the new construction below. We use it for analysis as well. So oftentimes we have some super smart project managers and superintendents on the job, and they'll come up with an idea and we build it virtually so that we can take a look at it, find any problems, and solve them before we actually execute in the field. So one of the key components to the whole project is heritage, and tracking that heritage, documenting that heritage, all that's critical to what we're doing there. So on this side here, you see this is a drone capture of the Peace Tower. Very nicely done. We have a drone that flies bi-weekly and on request. So if something special comes up, the drone goes up and takes a flight and snaps some photos. And this is a mesh that we've created from that drone imagery. So We oftentimes combine the two, the mesh and the point cloud data, so that we can analyze and do test fits around stuff. So as I said, heritage documentation and site protection. Heritage is key. Like, heritage is probably the most important factor on this job, just because there is so much heritage within the building that needs to be either removed or protected in place while we do construction. As you can imagine, there's a unicorn statue in the Senate side of things, and it has this little unicorn horn sticking out of it. So we have to deconstruct the Senate while making sure that we don't knock the horn off the unicorn. So it's doing things like documenting that and protecting it in place. So a lot of the time we do hand scanning in order to get an idea of what that mesh looks like. And then we're going to reverse engineer that so we can CNC some protection specifically for that piece. This example here is flooring. So all the marble floor tile within center block, we're actually pulling it up. So every piece of tile is going to be pulled up, put in boxes, and shipped to our storage warehouse. And then when the job is near completion, we'll bring all that marble floor back and put it exactly where it was where it was originally placed. So having something like this, rather than originally the conservators were going through and just snapping individual shots, but between ourselves and Centris, our consultants, have done an amazing job of documenting the place. They had a team called the Room by Room team, and that team went through and did high resolution photogrammetry as well as laser scanning before we got, or just after we got the keys actually. So it's very well documented. So I can oftentimes say, can you send me the raw data for this floor so I can send it to the conservators so that they have a more holistic view of that floor, right? It's also all geo-referenced, so when it comes to putting it back in place, we can pin those points and get the exact location. So each of these marble floor tiles also gets a unique asset identifier as well as a barcode. Then it goes in the box and gets shipped out. We have a management system that tracks each piece of heritage that goes out of the building, so we know exactly where it is at any given point in time. Yeah, so this is an example of the hand scanning. So as you can see with a hand scanner, you're getting that very, very fine resolution. So we can document this in a model format, and then we can add data to it later on if need be. We can also look for any significant issues, such as cracks or shards or anything like that. And then what we'll do is we'll invert the geometries so that we can create custom protection around these specific pieces. So there's a long list of items within center block that we need to look at that are hand scanned. So that process is just kind of continually ongoing. So now I'll talk about structural. I didn't put an agenda at the front of this, which is, that's a mistake. But anyway, so I'll talk about heritage, structural, envelope, MEP, our excavation and new construction, and we'll end it off with a little bit on site logistics. So as far as structural goes, there's going to be some pretty massive structural upgrades that happen to center block, especially in the foundation area. So we'll be adding base isolators, and this is for seismic protection. So they're basically big rubber pucks that vibrate during a seismic event. So eventually what we need to do, after we strengthen all of the existing foundation with new concrete beams, what we'll eventually have to do is we'll have to pile down these suckers, which will go down the 2 levels that we're excavating underneath center block. And then we'll have to install the shoring. So just for a little bit of visual reference, this piece of steel, my superintendent walked in the other day and he said, "We need to look at access for the basements." I was like, "We're always looking at access for the basements. What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, this is a 65-foot long piece of steel. How are we going to get that in there exactly?" So once that shoring goes in, there's a set of jacks that go in on top of the shoring. Those jacks are going to lift the building up. We're going to cut some concrete out and we're just going to slide those base isolators in. It's going to be smooth as silk. So you can imagine trying to coordinate these temporary works around our already existing temporary works. Takes up a fair amount of our time. Yeah, exactly. So this is just a shot of, this is our piling. This is our actual new construction coming up from 2 levels below. So in order not to kind of coop ourselves later on, we have to coordinate that now a couple of years in advance so that we know exactly what's happening where. That's a base isolator there. So, and then there's base isolators there. So I think there are about 850 base isolators that are going to be installed eventually. So it'll be through the main concrete piers as well as the exterior wall. So coordinating all that is a full-time job for sure. So the envelope at center block is masonry. So it's all masonry wall. And in order to do the work that needs to be done on the masonry, we build scaffold and scaffold and scaffold. So right now we've completed the north wall scaffold. We'll be continuing on the east and west scaffold. There will be scaffold towers that go into the center courtyards. And then we'll finish up with the south face and the Peace Tower at the end of the day. So eventually the whole thing will be surrounded by scaffolding. Again, it's temporary works that we need to know where it's at and coordinate around that. Yeah, so that's the north wall complete now. And yeah, we'll be continuing around the east and the west. So once these, basically the process that we've come up with for the scaffold is really, as a CM, we come up with a general idea of how we want the scaffold to land, where we want the stair towers to go, where we want the loading bays to go. We send that out to the public for tender, and we get usually a response back from somebody who knows scaffold backwards and forwards. They come up with a plan that suits our needs. They go out and build it, and then they'll send us the as-built files, and we recreate that digitally so that we have that virtual model so that we're maintaining consistent coordination throughout. So the other part of our masonry process is the entire facade of center block has been scanned by terrestrial scanners, and we have lots of drone data as well. The reason why that's key to us is that all of that data is being used to develop a 3D model. And this 3D model is actually every individual stone within center block. So every individual stone that you see here is an individual model element, and each individual model element has an asset ID. So what happens with that after it's been modeled is it gets kicked out to a model viewer that can track issues. And so we can actually track those issues up in here, and it goes through a digitized workflow. One of the guys that was on our team up until a few months ago came over to us from West Block, which had just undergone a rehabilitation prior to center block commencing. And one of his tasks for 2 years was to update line drawings indicating what was under repair, what was finished, what was perhaps replaced, and he did that straight in AutoCAD for 2 full years, every individual stone. This way, every stone is in here, and we track it, and we know, the length, the width, the height, the area. So our trade partner at Moran is really good on the north wall. So we'll see how the rest of it goes. So mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, the entire system needs to be gutted and redesigned. So we're working with Centris. Our trade partners are actually under a design assist component of their contract. So we have designers, engineers, and trade partners all working in the same model towards a solution. Because we can't really create any new spaces within center block, we have to shoehorn everything into the existing spaces around all of the heritage elements and around all of the infrastructure that's going to be put in place as well. So that's a generally large undertaking. And before we even really started all that, we had to actually install, again, temporary. This is our temporary mechanical and electrical system, which maintains the site, humidity, heating, and various other sensors, just so we can control the atmosphere within the building. Because of course, these heritage assets are very sensitive to any kind of fluctuations. So we need to maintain appropriate levels within the whole building while it's under construction. So really the first major component of the rehabilitation was to install the temporary system, which will be there for close to the duration of the program, and then pull out all of the existing infrastructure. So again, trade partners were Modern Niagara and TWZ on this part, and yeah, they're using their BIM capabilities to coordinate, to do their calculations, all that sort of thing. So worked out very well. It's still running. So the next component is the excavation for the Parliamentary Welcome Center. So this is an excavation in front of center block for the new construction. And the Parliamentary Welcome Center is going to provide a public access point as well as new service and new program areas for center block. So it's going to take a little bit of the load off center block as far as space goes. So there will be more conference spaces, I think, in the Parliamentary Welcome Center. So right now we're in year 2 of a 3-year excavation program. We're going down about 3 levels. If the office is 400 feet long, the excavation is 500 feet long. Yeah, so a lot of the time what we do is we do drones for imagery, and then we bring in the terrestrial scanner for our as-built conditions. So we are actually digitizing the entire excavation so that we can see things like these rock bolts, so that anybody coming down the road in the future can look at that digital data and see that, okay, there are rock bolts there. We also, though, are using that for our models, because again, we have to coordinate throughout the entire site. So as we get this data, we feed it into our program and we model it out. And that way we're getting information like exactly what type of anchor it is. Is it a 15B? Is it a 15A? Is it 30 meters long or is it 15 meters long? And at the end of the job, we'll be able to hand that over to our client and to our consultants and say, here is the as-built data as required. And anytime you go to cut rock in that area, watch out for these rock bolts. And yeah, I guess to wrap it up, just quick. Anyway, So site logistics are a key to what we do. So again, the drone flies twice a week, and then we use Civil 3D so that we can kind of track all the underground in the area as well. We use it for our egress, emergency egress. So there's a fair amount of planning that has to go around our fire access routes because fire is a little bit of a consideration at Center Block. So we use all that data, as much data as we can pull. And our superintendents have actually found the drone data pretty useful in providing a real-time background into what they do. So they can see what's happening in Kansas City there. Here are all the exits that are closed. Here are all the entrances that are open, as well as our laydown areas, all that sort of thing. So that's been it's been key really to have the drone there to do those flights. We also use it for volumetrics in the excavation, and yeah, just tracking the site logistics is so important to what we're doing there. We have to coordinate with PSPC operations as well for any of that work. So that brings us to the end. So I feel like I breezed kind of through that, but it was just really meant to be a high level view. And I mean, we could sit and talk about hours for all the various projects that go on there. So yeah, one thing to talk about is we talk about the program and the projects. So the Center Block itself is the program. And then within that program, we have so many 12 project teams, I think, running simultaneously. So there's a lot of coordination between their teams, you know, our demo 456 team and our demo level 01 team and our demo level 2, level 3 team, coordinating access routes, that sort of thing. So yeah. Questions? So many questions. I have so many too. Go for it.
Well, the first question is, you mentioned working with a lot of partners. There is only one partner, the centrist partners, your centrist partners in network projects. What was like the collaboration process in the entire thing?
The collaboration process. So when I talk about the 12 smaller projects, that's really an internal collaboration. That's part of the PCL ED joint venture construction management team. So we've just divided the work into smaller projects. Rather than take a big bite and say, everyone go, we've divided everybody up into project teams. Our collaboration with Centris is great. So Centris is a consortium made of HOK, A49, and WSP. You know, top minds in the world as far as this kind of thing goes. So we have a very collaborative effort with them. You know, I can reach over the fence and ask them for a particular piece of data, or they can ask me for a particular piece of data, or that kind of thing. So it's very collaborative that way. And on the scope of that project, it really has to be, right? Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what kind of system do you use for collaboration? You said many documentation.
Yeah.
But you have some cloud-based.
We have a variety of systems in place. I'm not going to delve too deeply into that. Project-wise is one of the systems that we use. Revit server. We have a VDI, virtual desktop interface that our trade partners can collaborate on the Revit server with. So there's a variety of systems in place that we all use.
How about the maintenance ability? You think you do many simulation of the and then replacing many stone or material, and then attach some unique ID or RFID.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it can be used for some maintenance phase.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things that Centrus is working on is what they call the heritage asset database. And so it's going to be a complete database of each of those elements and all the associated data with it. So it's a big lift for sure, but I have seen what they're doing with it, and it's pretty fantastic stuff. So yeah, the idea being that somebody in maintenance looking at heritage assets, because there is a Dominion sculptor who's in charge of the sculptures within Center Block, and so he'll be able to look at one of those pieces of sculpture and know exactly what happened to it when. Even all the important data like who it was actually built by, that sort of thing. So that's definitely in the works.
Is it the plan is made by the designer, so like that is into team, or some kind of the consulting person from the IT side, and then jointly working together with the designer.
Yeah, no, it's been a very collaborative effort between us to come up with that kind of plan. So yeah, and we have databases that they integrate with in order to get the data they need. They have databases that we integrate with in order to get what we need. So yeah, there's a lot of coordination that has to happen there.
So drone and then point cloud and some RFI. So all those are coordinated by some IT vendor or consultant.
Yeah, like the.
Maybe there in the future, I guess just rehabilitation or modernize the whole building is that kind of the project is not too. There are many projects, and then HOK or a very big company.
Yeah.
But know-how, I think so. They're using that kind of the very modern technology, combining with those heritage conservation, that kind of old technology, combined combination is a new area. So not many experts exist, is my feeling. So,
No, I would say you're right, but there are some pretty smart people at Centrus, and there are some pretty smart people at the JP as well, for sure.
Yeah, how are the contracts for the subcontractors, given it was kind of a big question mark type of project for them going in? I mean, I think once you open up a wall, I'm in the interior business, change orders galore, I would imagine.
So I think in order to mitigate that, there was a huge amount of investigation that went on before those actual tenders went out on the street. So there was a pretty good, and quite frankly, Center Block was as built pretty well back in like 1928. So there was a fair idea of what was happening within the structure, within the mechanical, electrical systems, that sort of thing. That being said, the demo and abatement part is a completely separate tender unto itself, right? And so I think that probably went as a unit price of just, this is how much asbestos we think you have to remove. Give us a price for it, right? And then, with the rehabilitation portion of it, having Modern and TWZ sign on as design assist partners, then they have a little bit of leverage there as to what's actually being designed. And, they're very good partners in working with Centrus to analyze kind of the singular chases that go from one parliamentary office unit to another, and seeing what they can fit in there and what they can achieve.
Now, they conducting Parliament right now in there, or?
So Parliament has been relocated since 2019. think they relocated in May. Yeah, May 2019. So what is it? The house sits in West Block, which underwent its own rehabilitation about 6 or 7 years ago. And the Senate is sitting in the GCC. Yeah. Yeah, the Senate sits in the Government Conference Center. So both of them in downtown Ottawa, but yeah, they both left Parliament for sure. Yes, sir.
Total, like tons of data capture that you're doing there, right? So there's lots of data coming in. Have you guys had any struggles with managing that data, like from a sort of piggybacking on what he was saying, like the infrastructure to kind of keep that data available to all of the stakeholders, all of the teams? Has there been any hurdles in that regard? Getting into scanning, all I always hear is like, well, the files are so large, and how do we host those up? How do we share that? That kind of stuff. So I'm just curious how you manage that and how you manage that.
Sure. So yeah, when we're talking about scan data, especially that room by room data, that's terabytes. It's like 2 or 3 terabytes. Centris has signed on with Cintu as their provider. So yeah, all the cloud data gets uploaded to Cintu. As well, it resides on local servers as well, right? Because you need to process it someplace. So they have terabyte drives for local servers, but in general, it gets pushed out to something like Jetstream for ease of use in the Revit models, and Cintu for general consumption.
Then another question I had, so off that topic, is from the redesign of the systems in the building, has there been efforts to look at like green or energy efficient?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's a big component of what we're doing. And yeah, there have been several options looked at as far as, you know, where can we actually get runoff water and where can we store that. So there are going to be components like that all throughout the building. So yeah.
Carbon tax.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any questions online?
No, there's.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate your attention for this last little while. I hope you learned a little bit, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you.
Very good.